Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. Today is Sunday, and we are glad to have you with us here. It is week 6. Well, at least it's the aftermath of week 6. We had quite the Saturday yesterday, did we not? Some shocking, I'm talking shocking upsets that went down. One in particular that might be as big of an upset as I've seen in college football in quite some time, as far as what we saw going into the game and what we saw coming out of the game. So we will start it there. UCLA knocks down Penn State 42-37. Probably, and like I said, the most shocking result of the 2025 season. Not only was UCLA winless, but they were completely rudderless. They've already gassed pretty much everybody in the program. They've fired Deshaun Foster. They've fired their offensive coordinator. They fired all these folks. And all of a sudden, sitting there kind of wondering, like, all right, what does UCLA do from here? Are they going to go 0-12? I mean, they were on 0-12 watch based on how bad they've been beaten. They've not just been beaten by G5 teams. They've been beaten badly by some G5 teams as well. The Bruins at 0-4 not only defeated a national title contender, but they physically dominated them in some ways. Like, first win over the Nittany Lions in 67, snapping a 16-game losing streak against AP top 10 teams, and they scored in their first 5 possessions. That to me is wild. You're sitting there up 20 at halftime and looking there and thinking, Penn State's kind of, whatever. And by the way, they were on at the same time as us, so I need to go back and watch this tape and kind of dial in. And that's why we have our show that we'll put out a little later this afternoon as well. It'll allow me, this is my rapid reaction. I'm going to dive in and explain why Penn State did not approach this game the right way. I want to explain that. I want to go and watch the tape. Like, was it really as painful as James Franklin made it sound in his 97 excuses that he gave us after the game as to why they lost? I want to go back. I want to watch the tape, and I want to dial in. But they did at least show some life there in the second half. I mean, 14 points in a row, did it quickly, denied Dennis Sutton, blocks a punt, recovered. Next thing you know, it's a game. You're starting to think, all right, Penn State's going to get back into this thing, right? And then Nico, boom, breaks their back with a big scramble. Then they, of course, execute well on the fourth down, stop them. And then I loved what UCLA did at the end. You got an interim situation going on with their coaching staff. They decided to take a safety. Genius idea. Very, very savvy. It kind of eliminated the risk of a block punt, considering they already have one in this game. So, very, very well done. Career-defining moment for Nico Iamaleava. Highly touted transfer, of course. We've talked about him a lot. He was directly responsible for 5 of the 6 touchdowns that UCLA scored and accounted for nearly 300 all-purpose yards. 3 big keys of this game, just in the box score here, right? The time of possession battle, nearly 2-1. UCLA possessed the ball for nearly 40 minutes. That, of course, had a huge impact on how this game played out. Total rushing yards. You look at how UCLA handled it, 270-ish compared to Penn State's $150-ish, right? Shows you that UCLA wasn't fluky. They were up to the task. And then third down. That was big as well in this game. UCLA's conversion rate of 63%, 10 of 16. That was the reason why they had long, time-consuming drives. And while Penn State wasn't terrible on third down, it's just Penn State's defense couldn't get off the field. And that's what led to the upset. So big win for UCLA. Check back with us later today when we watch the tape. We'll explain why it happened. Let's go next to the Swamp, where at the time a 1-3 Florida team is welcoming in a Texas team who is sitting there at 3-1, kind of in gotta-have-it mode, especially with what's coming up next week against Oklahoma, a top 5 team, even though Oklahoma's without their quarterback. Next thing you know, Florida comes out. What have we been begging for a while with Florida? I mean, they've been on a 3-game losing streak. They were their own worst enemy. They kept turning the ball over, and the offense was struggling. I don't know what to tell you. Well, boom, 10-0 before you even wake up, and things are looking really, really good. Now, offensively, this is kind of the Florida team we thought we were going to see. The kind of game-changing moment, though, came all the way in the third quarter. They, of course, have an outstanding quarterback in DJ Lagway from a talent standpoint, but Lagway has not played well this year. All right, he has been substandard with some of his accuracy, has been substandard with some of his decision-making. Well, the return of Dallas Wilson for the first time this season, and we had talked a little bit about him here early in the spring. We also talked about him a little earlier in the summer. we weren't sure when he was coming back. It was one of the better kept secrets in college football. Because he was out, they knew we'd be back at some point. We just weren't sure when. Well, did he announce his presence or what? Was absolutely unbelievable. Lagway hits him, 55-yard touchdown that extended Florida's lead at the time, 29-14. It was unbelievable to see the impact just one wide receiver had on this Florida offense. And while they have other weapons, it's not like Florida's Dallas Wilson is the only guy they have. They have other weapons, but his emergence goes to show you that a go-to wide receiver, albeit a true freshman, that can take over the game, that can do a lot with how a defense structures, because Texas doesn't give up a lot of explosive plays. Defensively, that's not what they do. Well, they gave up a couple in this game, and it was massive. As far as Texas, bunch of self-inflicted mistakes. Like I said, going to go back and tell you why it happened, how they can be better in the future. Texas, to me, I'm jumping to some conclusions about this team based on this performance. I got to watch the tape, and I'll tell you, like I said, a little later today, I'm jumping to some conclusions based on the brief amount of time that I spent watching the game. This team is going to have some challenges going forward. It's not going to get much easier for Texas. They still have a bunch of losable games on the docket. And I think that this team is probably going to underwhelm and potentially miss the playoff. I'll explain why, though, a little later on today's show. Later in the show, not this show, tonight's show. But couple of missed throws, couple of deep balls that could have been touchdowns. The offensive line, I thought, was a little disappointing in the little bit that I was able to watch. There were plenty of opportunities for Texas to kind of flip this thing, and they couldn't quite get it going. They just couldn't quite get out of their own way. They get into their Texas, they move into Florida territory. They allow a defensive line for Florida that had been a little banged up to get home. All of a sudden, their quarterback's under duress, and it's a huge problem. But this game was really about DJ Lagway returning to prominence. This game was really about Dallas Wilson, who at sometimes in the game was somewhat uncoverable, announcing his presence in the college football world in his first college game. This is a dynamic duo that you can hang your hat on. It's also a reminder that Florida's defensive line's legit. Now, they have depth there. They have quality there. And while they're just 2-3, tell me a team right now that wants to play the Florida Gators. I'm telling you, there's not many, okay, outside of maybe Miami. All right, Miami would very comfortably be willing and able to play against the Florida Gators like they proved a couple weeks ago. Speaking of the Miami Hurricanes, Sunshine State supremacy. State championship goes to the Hurricanes, who outlast Florida State 28-22. For 3 quarters, I almost was debating whether I should change the channel. And I had 3 TVs going. I had Texas A&M, Mississippi State on one side. I had Miami and Florida State in the middle. And on the other side, we were watching Kansas and UCF, which was a highly entertaining game. Those are the 3 games I had going there in the nightcap as I sat there and watched from home. And I'm sitting there, I was like, you guys want to change the Miami game? This game's over. 28-3. It was an unbelievable start by Carson Beck. The explosive throws downfield. Malachi Toney on some catch and run situations. Man, this was unbelievable. And the defense, too, after that first drive, to hold Florida State to that field goal and then go on to force either a punt or turnover on 7 consecutive drives goes to show you just how good this defense is, man. I mean, they completely neutralized a rushing attack that had been one of the best in college football this season. They constantly flustered Thomas Castellanos, too. I mean, he was running for his life. They forced him to roll left, which is never something that's very comfortable for a right-handed passer. The defensive plan was obviously all about stopping the run, and it was executed to perfection. Florida State came in averaging well in the 250, 230 range running the football per game. Well, they held them to 132 yards on 38 carries in just 3.5 an attempt. So that forced the Seminoles into playing a game that they don't really want to play. They don't want to be a drop-back passing attack. Of course, they were in such a hole, too. They almost had to be. So this game was perfectly executed by the Hurricanes. They also forced some key mistakes. Miami created 3 takeaways, a couple picks, a fumble. The offense played a clean game, and the critical decision-making was enormous in them being able to secure this victory in the state championship for the Hurricanes. We felt great about Miami all year. Nothing's changed. This was not a remarkable surprise, but the level of dominance there in the first three quarters, that was a bit of a surprise. Now, if there's something to clean up, fourth quarter performance perhaps, but I mean, they let their foot off the gas at this point, and frankly, that doesn't bother me that bad. Not when you're in complete control, 25-point lead there in the fourth quarter, because it never felt like Florida State was going to steal the game. Now, by the way, Florida State had a bunch of weird onside kicks in this one too, like spinny, weird onside kicks that were tough to tangle, and Miami was able to do it 3 times. So that was also very impressive as well. Alabama knocks off Vanderbilt, 30-14. Big moment there in the second quarter. Vandy's leading 7-0, driving into Alabama territory, threatening to take a 2-touchdown lead. And Diego Pavia gets the ball ripped out by Justin Jefferson. And it went from being what could have been a 14-0 lead into a 7-7 ball game because Alabama immediately went and capitalized on that fumble lost in the red zone. And then just before halftime, Bama sitting there down 14-7. That was really the one massive drive that Vanderbilt put together, was to get to 14-7. But that was at about the 50-yard line where they got that ball, went down and put together a really nice score. A couple shovel passes, third down conversion, very nice. They're 14-7. There's about 90 seconds left, thereabouts. Maybe a little less than that, to be honest with you. And Bama goes, and Ty Simpson and this offense do it again. 6 plays, 78 yards, just over a minute, culminating in a 27-yard touchdown pass to Jimmy Bernard down the left sideline. Getting the game to 14-14 heading into the locker room was massive, because it felt like Vandy had some moments, and then they let a couple moments get away from them. The fumble going in, Bama cleaned up how they were defending the run, which kind of eliminated the big and explosive plays that Vandy was able to create on the ground. Their secondary did a great job. This was really all about Alabama's defensive adjustments. I mean, if you look at Vandy in the first quarter, let's just say the first half, they rushed for 126 yards there in the first half. Well, the way that the defensive staff adjusted was tremendous. 126 in the first half, 9 yards rushing by Alabama's defense after halftime. That's pretty impressive to see the adjustments there. You also look at Vanderbilt's performance from a point scored standpoint. First half 14, second half 0. Alabama did a great job, I think, especially there in the second half with eyes defensively. There were a few miscues, a few things where guys were out of position. Guys were just slightly too tight. They backed guys off. They calmed guys down. And they created a little confusion for Diego Pavia, who doesn't often turn the ball over. He's pretty good from a decision-making standpoint. He made a couple critical errors in this game as well. And then if you look at Ty Simpson's performance, he was outstanding from start to finish. Continues to be tough, continues to mature, continues to drive the ball into tight windows. There were some tight window throws. And one thing that he continues to do as well as anybody is attack the middle of the field. Well, in this game, we actually saw him attack a little bit more outside the numbers too, which is a little different from what we've seen through the first 5 or 6 games. So looking forward to seeing Ty Simpson's continued development. This was a good win for Alabama. We'll break it down a little bit more in tonight's show. This is a good win. I actually came out of this thinking that Vandy's a handful. Like, they are a very good college football team. They really are. But I do think that Alabama has a good staff that made key adjustments and made some significant changes to make life difficult on Vandy. And the plays that Vandy made a year ago, Bama made this year. A couple turnovers, a couple big mistakes where they capitalized on the mistakes that Vandy made. I think that was huge in this one. Alabama, by the way, possessing the ball. Last year, they possessed it for 17 minutes and 52 seconds in the loss to Vandy. Well, in the first half, they possessed it for over 18 minutes. They almost used Vanderbilt's game plan from last year against Vanderbilt, which is pretty cool to see how Alabama has evolved from one year as kind of an explosive, high-flying attack to a little more methodical, a little bit more capable of beating you in a lot of different ways. So Alabama has evolved tremendously, and I think it's good news for Tide fans because that team's not going anywhere. They're going to be very, very good. Tough road trip this week, though, on the road at Mizzou. We'll talk a little more about Alabama in tonight's show. The Big 12, a bit of a shakeup, but one that we kind of predicted. We said I thought Cincinnati would handle Iowa State. They did, 38-30. This was a blistering start from Cincinnati. It felt like in the blink of an eye, they're out 17-0. I mean, just exploded out of the gate. 3 first quarter possessions, boom, 17-0. 200 plus yards of total offense there in the first 15 minutes. Kind of set the tone. And Iowa State is not really a team that you would love to have in trail mode and throw it all over the yard mode. Iowa State's kind of one of those complementary outfits where if you get them in a hole, can they throw their way out of a jam? I actually think they did a pretty good job of making it a little interesting because it looked like at first this was going to be all Bearcats all day long. They were sitting there and it looked like things were going to be about a one-score game. And the Bearcats, huge stop, stuffing that 4th and 1 as Rocco Beck had it deep in the red zone. Looked like things were going to be going in the direction of the Cyclones, and it did not materialize. Boom, as soon as they make that stop, Sorsby goes for the jugular, hits the game-breaking 82-yard pass. That explosive play kind of extended the Bearcats' lead. They're sitting there at 38-22, and it kind of stalled any momentum that could be created by the Clones. So this is big, all right? Huge, huge performance by the Bearcats being able to kind of control the line of scrimmage and gashing Iowa State's defense for nearly 260 yards on the ground. You got Evan Pryor who goes for 111. You got Tawi Walker who goes for 89. Those guys were relentless. I mean, breaking tackles, controlling the line of scrimmage. If you look at the yards per carry numbers for Cincinnati to average over 7.5 per carry, pretty impressive by not just the running backs, but also the offensive line, because they were probably able to get a bunch of guys at the second and third levels. But it was very, very impressive. I think the Cincinnati team was legit. I think they are a real deal football team, so they're going to be around here throughout the rest of the year. Let's go rapid fire through the rest of the action in the top 25. And like I said, if we missed anything, we will get back to it. There will be a lot that we will kind of put a bow on, and the takeaways here on the Sunday evening edition of Always College Football. So don't worry if we didn't get into a dive of your team. Come back and check with us a little bit later on. Ohio State takes care of Minnesota. Defense continues their unbelievably ridiculous first half of the season start. I mean, 5th consecutive opponent to 10 points or fewer. First time that's been done since 79 by the Buckeyes. Julian Sand appears like things are looking really good for him. We're starting to see some explosiveness. Hits Carnell Tate. I mean, Carnell Tate there in the first half was off the charts. Continued that in the second half, 3 touchdowns. Very, very impressive performance from the Buckeyes, but should not have come as a huge surprise. Minnesota, I think, is okay, but I do think Ohio State, from a personnel standpoint, much more than what you can anticipate from the Golden Gophers. Oklahoma 44, Kent State 0. Sooners defense was completely dominant. Grayson Halton, big boy, even gets a little pay dirt on a 4-yard fumble recovery. Held Kent State to just 135 total yards and a 2 for 13 on third down. Pretty impressive. A&M knocks off Mississippi State 31-9. Little sluggish there in the first half, but the defense, I think, did a really good job. Little few things that need to kind of iron out. They, of course, hit Concepcion on the touchdown there to the left side. Very impressive what we've seen from the Aggies. I think they're kind of the quietest team in college football. We've probably spent less time on them than any other team in the top 10 because they just quietly keep going about their business, man. A&M is the real deal. I mean, they're a legitimate national championship contender. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about them on tonight's show. Texas Tech knocks off Houston. Complete control from a defensive standpoint, just completely stuffing Houston all throughout. That's a battle of unbeatens, too. So going on the road and getting a win like that, very good win for the Red Raiders. Georgia handles Kentucky 35-14. Bounced back from the loss to Bama and had a really dominant performance on third down, right? Third down was a key down in the Bama game. Well, when you go out against Kentucky and convert 9 of your first 10, that's pretty good, right? Gunnar Stockton and Dylan Bell each had a couple rushing scores. So I like where things are heading for Georgia. They're going to be just fine. Big matchup coming up this week, though, when they go on the road, which is always tough to go on the road. That might be one of our takeaways a little later today. Always tough to go on the road. I think this is a solid win for Georgia, but this will be a good challenge this week when they go on the road to Auburn, who's coming off a bye and will probably be a better outfit than what we saw prior to that week of self-reflection. Michigan handles Wisconsin 24-10. Justice Haynes, first running back all season, eclipsed 100 yards against Wisconsin's top-ranked run defense. He finished with 117 and a couple scores. Also had a couple big plays, too. Big run there in the first quarter, longer than any rush that the Badgers had allowed all year. Michigan's physically getting better and better and better as the season goes along. Like where things are heading there. Not that surprised by the way that Wisconsin battled. They're a tough football team. Michigan just too much. Notre Dame dispatches Boise State 28-7. The defense for the Irish. We've been kind of talking about this group now for the last couple of weeks. Remember how bad it was their early first 3-4 games. Well, the last couple of weeks now, this defense starting to show signs. To create that many takeaways, 4 picks was massive. So the dominance from Notre Dame kind of controlled the contest, even though the offense had a little bit of a lackluster performance. So it was kind of nice, frankly, to see the offense struggle. I think that'll be good for them long term, relatively speaking. And then the defense be the star of the show. That's going to be good for Notre Dame's long-term development. Illinois knocks off Purdue 43-27. Alano, the kicker, by the way, had 5 field goals in this game. He also had 19 points. And then you have Luke Altmaier, who continues to just go about his business, throws for 390. That's a career high. This was on Friday night. BYU knocks off West Virginia 38-24. Bear Bachmeier, 351 passing yards and a couple touchdowns. The first play of the game, to see him go back and launch it for 47 yards, you knew it was going to be one of those nights. And then West Virginia, by the way, pretty impressive with what they're doing. Scoring 24 against that defense. I think that defense is outstanding. But they're doing it with a third-string quarterback / a fourth-string quarterback. Like, they've lost their top 2 guys. So kind of weird with what Rich Rodriguez has to deal with right now with West Virginia. Not easy. But BYU handles their business and do so in remarkable fashion. And then finally, in the top 25, Virginia maintains their hot streak of late. They knock off Louisville. They pull off their second consecutive upset of an undefeated team, even though they were number 24 in the country. Louisville was unranked. Virginia went into this game as an underdog. Touchdown by Jamari Taylor, the best running back you probably don't know a lot about. And this is the big, big win for Virginia because I think it provided a little more validation. To do it at home when everybody's watching is one thing. Well, how do you do it the following week when everybody's telling you how great you are and you got to go on the road into a hostile environment against a well-coached football team that is undefeated? This tells me a lot about how real Virginia might be this season. Look, that'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Check us out a little later today. All right, we're going to be around. We're going to be doing more dives into some of these games, and we'll give you our top 10 takeaways. So that'll be released a little later this afternoon, evening, okay? We want to make sure we go in and watch the tape. We want to spend appropriate time on diving deep in the weeds on some of these matchups. So keep it locked in. If you're here with us via the podcast platform, just go ahead and subscribe. If you are here with us on the ESPN College Football YouTube page, keep it locked in right here. We'll be back a little later this afternoon and evening once we dive into the tape and give you some 10 takeaways from the weekend that was the college football week 6 slate. So that'll do it for us here at ACF. For Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. We'll see you later tonight. It's Always College Football.
Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.